Hi, you're watching Avenue X, and today let's talk about a recently went into theater film in China, 热烈, one and only. I actually landed on the day that this film officially got released in theaters. I managed to catch this film. For real, there's a ticket. It is a contemporary film about street dance that's led by Huang Bo and Wang Yibo, directed by Da Peng, written by Su Biao and Da Peng. And I believe for most of my audiences on my channel, you all know Wang Yibo. And street dance is the beginning of his entire career of eventually becoming an idol and then actor. Let's first talk about a couple of basic things about this film. It was shot last year from end of May till early right now, August, mostly in the city Hangzhou. Huang Bo, he is very famous in China as the middle-aged, well-known actor, mostly in comedy. He's been around for a long time. But a lot of people don't know, at the beginning of his career, he was a proper dancer. It's been decades now, obviously he doesn't dance anymore, but in this drama, you'll see him dance for a bit, and it makes a lot of sense for him to basically play a coach of street dance. The director Da Peng has done quite a few films that are doing very well in China in recent years, and he's a very multifaceted person. He's done everything. He's been a singer, being an actor, being a TV host, anchor, like everything you can think of that needs a camera on you and you do something. He's done it. And this is not his debut film. He has already done quite a few before. If you look at the makeup of this production, it's quite interesting that it has 25 listed production companies. So I'm not gonna read them out one by one. You can look at that. Just put it on the screen for you. In terms of the casting, apart from Huang Bo and Wang Yibo, you'll see a lot of very familiar comedy actors in China, including Yue Yunpeng, Xiao Shenyang, also Liu Mintao, the middle-aged actress who shows up in all kinds of dramas these days. On top of that, if you have watched Youku's multiple seasons of the variety show Street Dance, Wang Yibo himself was in the show as team leader for multiple seasons. You're gonna see so many faces who are contestants, who are dancers in that show, who would show up in this movie as street dancing dancers or judges or people in background. In terms of the story, it is a very, very simple story. It's a classic underdog win the day type of situation in the street dance environment. You have our main character who comes from very humble background, gets picked by the coach, and then the drama is gonna happen. Eventually they're gonna win. Technically, you can't really spoil this type of film for anybody because you've seen this type of film a million times. Often in sports related films, also arts like dancing, music, I mean, name it, Hollywood is a huge producer of this type of movies. If you want to rate this film using my 7-level scale, anywhere from gold/land to 1.5 gold is a reasonable rating. Maybe if you really like the actor, you can like bump it up to 2 gold mine. I still understand it. If I am completely just looking at it as a piece of entertainment, do I feel enjoyment? Do I get entertained? Do I feel like the money I spend is not wasted and that type of thing? From a very general audience's perspective, I would say this film probably can get a 1 to 2 gold mine. If I switch on the analyzing brain, it wouldn't be called a really good movie. Being polite, I'll rate it at the middle. If I'm being very picky, maybe slightly dipping below the middle line. So today, in this review, I'm gonna break it into looking at it from a more positive angle and encouragement angle, and just because it's a really rare breed of film for Chinese cinema. And then the problems I can see and why say, if you compare it to other good movies in this genre, why almost nothing can be said is well done of this movie. First, on the let's look at it from a positive angle side of things, there are mainly two things that I think would make this film special and worth watching, even for international audiences. First is this type of movie, like I said, it's very common in Hollywood and globally, but if we only limit the perspective to China, this is a really rare type of movie. You hardly ever seen it gets made. If you just narrow it down to street dance, then there's even less. Cannot really think of any other that actually ended up in cinema and have a quite good sort of scheduling and box office and performance proper big film. It deserves a little bit more love and encouragement, and hoping that in the future more people would be interested in making this type of movie. And I do feel there's quite a lot of passion when I watch the movie, actors and actresses who are real dancers. You really can tell it's made by people who really love street dance, and they know that there aren't any other people doing it, and I can appreciate that a lot. The other thing is, if you're a Wang Yibo fan, this is, in my opinion, to date, his best role in anything and everything he's done. Pretty much everything he's done I've watched, if not episode by episode, at least every work. This is his best role, best performance, without a question, because this is such a tailored to him role. Everything considered like a contemporary person who doesn't need to have any imagined identities or time setting like he does in period dramas. And it's just the average guy, which, I mean, he's not average guy these days, he's rich and he's the money-making machine for his company. But I mean, he's still a contemporary young guy, and he did come from street dance background. He took competitions when he was young, and that was the entry point for him to eventually got picked by talent agent and got sent to South Korea to get trained, and then blah blah blah, everything that happened later. He knows what street dance is about. He's done it since he was a teenager. He has got years and years of experience dancing, and obviously being the team leader of that variety show, he also have met many internationally renowned, really great dancers who would actually show up in his film too. So this is like his forte. This is his place. This is his natural habitat. If he cannot do this well, he cannot do anything well on camera. The moment you start watching this film, you're like, oh, okay, this is his perfect role. On top of that, it's a very simple character. The character actually doesn't have complicated issues and performance moments to deal with. With all these elements in place, he delivers the best performance in his career. And obviously, he's a dancer himself, and he dances quite well. So if you're a fangirl or fanboy, you like watching him dance, well, this is the best film you can get. So these are the definitely positive things and worth watching things about this film. The other thing is, if you like a generally sort of happy, a lot of passion, a lot of color, energy, music going on, like you don't pick at, you know, the artistry of that, you just like want an overall entertaining thing, and this film is just as good as any that can get made in 2020's films in this world. Moving on to the second part, which is now let's get like scrutinizing as a film production. What are the problems? First, this is a completely predictable story. As I told you what type of story it is, you already can imagine every stage that the main character is going to go through. You finish one scene, you know immediately next scene is going to be what, and you can even predict the obligatory montage sequence. When things happen to a point and then, okay, everything is ready, now we need to practice and get the whole thing put together. So in between the final realization of that whatever stage of plot, and then people starting to getting prepared, training, and intercut with their living their life, you don't hear any dialogues. It's just like all the shots and with the music in the background like MV. You will be able to know when you're like, yeah, we need a scene like that. And then immediately, next thing is that. Exactly as you picture it, they do it for like a minute or two and then move on to the next stage. There are multiple music videos in this film. The second thing, not the ideal way of telling stories, in my opinion, which is the main characters. You have two, the coach and the student, the Huang Bo and the Wang Yibo. For both of them, right, they are the type of characters who from beginning till the end, nothing changed. Having no arc type of character. For the Huang Bo, he's more questionable. He's done things that are not so good. You do know a little bit about his background, which is he was a really famous dancer, just one step away from making it. And he had a girlfriend who is still kind of like loving him, but they're not really back together yet in the film. That's it. You only know that, and there's no attempt to build up the layer and the reality of this person at all. For Wang Yibo's trial, it's even more is he's just a saint and angel from beginning to the end. Innocent, good, talented, but very poor guy who has no resources but somehow just has the biggest talent in the world, who has to carry so much on his shoulders supporting the family. He delivers the food from the mother's restaurant. He goes to car wash for the posh cars to get extra money. He goes to dance for whatever ridiculous shows to get money. He does like 10 jobs at the same time, and he practices midnight when there's nobody in the restaurant. Those skills that nobody teaches him, he just see it from a video and he knows how to do it. But he's such a good guy. Like he never complains, never gets angry, nothing ever happens to him that make you feel like he's an antsy young man, you know, like he's just so good. 20-year-old angel who happens to have like great talent in dancing. So technically speaking, he's a character without arc at all. He never changes. He's just like by default. And the moment he gets out of the factory, he's perfect. The next point I would say is there are a lot of very cheaply added elements in this film that are clearly, just by watching it, you know exactly what the director is trying to do. He knows his audiences living in 2020s are familiar with what kind of memes, jokes that are popular in China. For example, the huge reference to 甄嬛传. A lot of Chinese people use that drama's moments and lines and plot to refer things in real life. It gets heavily quoted in everything. But many other little jokes and little references here and there that are all very in time in 2022-3 that are clearly put there to basically constantly remind the audiences that they can get a really quick and cheap response and laugh. It makes them at least believe they're connected to the film and the film is talking to them, and then it's relatable, and you can constantly stimulate the audiences, not let them fall asleep because you just made a joke about something that everybody knows. Arguably, how much these things would actually help the story, help the characters. Yeah, fun but meaningless. I wouldn't call this type of tactics a huge flaw, but it also shows that they know that they lack certain things, so they have to fill it up. Camouflaging elements to at least make it appear to be better. The last thing, when it actually comes to filming street dance, whether it's training, whether it's playing certain very difficult skills, anything that's actually related to the dance on stage or in practice, this film actually doesn't do a very good job of capturing that with a camera. Certain movements they design is not that possible to do in one go, so they have to cut it, do it multiple times from different angles so that it can flow. Then the other thing is they're trying to make it using all the camera movements and sound effects and music and high shutter speed to give you that energy, and this is passionate, this is like, oh, and we're doing a film, so we're not actually doing a variety show, therefore I have to make it look like a film. They're doing it so over the top that often you don't actually see the performance. You don't have enough time that's like holding on the full shot of the dancer, their body, how they're doing it, and how great that skill is. It gets cut away, it gets diluted by very fast shutter speed and then framing that doesn't actually show you the whole body. It's very annoying. At a certain point you're gonna get annoyed by that. Can we just have a full white shot of this person on stage doing that whole trick like for 10 seconds instead of every second you make a cut? If you want to look at really good street dance that's being shot like in real time of a person just doing the whole thing in one take and you can see his full body, watch the Youku street dance variety show. Most of the dancers that you see in this film come from that show, and they're internationally renowned, really famous dancers. It actually shows you the dance much better than what you get in this film. For example, the last thing. Now here's a big spoiler, so if you don't want to hear, just jump to this time code. The reason that this team is called exclamation mark, and then they designed this move that is hard to do, which is you have to have the dancer jump in the air and flip around, become completely vertical in air, and then there is a helmet that just comes in, and they form the exclamation mark in air. And you'll see that at the very end of the film with very high speed camera, super slow, right? You see that moment. Now I'm okay with that, but it's a dance move. You're actually moving in the air, and when you're super slow here, you have to basically show how the person land because he has to come down. But in the film, you're not gonna see that. It just stops there. Next shot is actually a very tight shot of this guy already landing, and it's not even bothering to show the feet landing on the ground. It's just like profile shot of the person like landing in this framing. Maybe like that is just too hard to do in one shot, but it's so anticlimax when you see that happening. It's like, he needs to land and he doesn't. One final thing is, apart from like Kai said earlier that the two main characters don't have arc, the rest of the supporting roles, the mother, the uncle, the friends, the garbage selling guy, all those roles, there's so many of them. They're also just functional. You know nothing about them. And when you think carefully about their setup, that person has a very special thing. Maybe they have a weird hair, they have a weird way of talking, and this person does wax figure. They all look very theatrical and unusual, but then it just stops there. You know nothing beyond the point and the superficial things. Even the male lead's parents' artist story is hardly really being explored at any level. It basically is just characters saying that and telling you, oh, I have a mother, I have a father, they had this past, and You see nothing actually gets shown in the cinema's language. You don't get built up of any of that. For example, the anti-hero guy, the super uber rich guy who is also a great dancer, he's so paper thin, and it doesn't attempt in any way to explain a guy who is basically far die, second generation rich guy. Like, how did he even end up in street dance? And like, it actually doesn't make sense. It's just convenient, basically, for the plot's sake, because he needs to be rich so that the main sort of conflict can happen. This movie basically is, if you look at it this way, it's by no means a good movie. If you look at it that way, well, still worth encouragement and not a complete piece of crap, and also because it's so rare in Chinese cinema. And I mean, I enjoyed it. Like the last half an hour, I was like, yeah, you have to win, and then you see how they actually win it. Although the process doesn't quite make sense. If it's screening where you are in the big theater, I think you can go and watch on a day when the ticket is cheap. Don't buy it full price. Do it on Tuesday when it's half price or whatever. For international audiences who cannot actually see it on big screen, when it becomes streamable online, it's still worth checking out. And obviously for Wang Yibo fans, I don't see why you wouldn't want to watch it. You'd be very happy about your idol's performance and overall how this film makes him appear. It's definitely on the positive end of things. So that should conclude my film review of the Chinese street dance movie that got into theater 2023, July 28th. 热烈, one and only. Thank you for watching. I'm New X. I'll see you in my next video. Meanwhile, live long and happy drama and film watching.